Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you will consider subscribing before you leave today. We are in the middle of summer berry season, so today I thought I would do a video that is often requested of me. We are going to be making a low sugar or no sugar jam. I chose to do black raspberry jam because they are an earlier berry and they are so decadent in flavor. They're one of my absolute favorites, but you can use this for other types of berries. You can also use this method for other fruit jams as well. We are going to be using the low or no sugar pectin by Ball. It comes in a little canister, so it's bulk pectin. When you remove the label, on the inside of the label, it gives you instructions for making low sugar or no sugar jam. Now, I am making low sugar jam. Just a word about no sugar in canning. I understand people have to do it for health reasons, but I think anytime you're canning fruits, and certainly jams or jellies, it's true as well, your product does benefit from having some sugar added. Now, Ball gives us some leeway in the amount of sugar we can add or leave out. So that's really nice. So you can kind of go by how flavorful, how sweet your berries are when you're determining how much sugar that you want to use. For me, I kind of went middle of the road for this recipe. The sugar will help your fruit, either if you're canning straight up fruit or in this case a jam or a jelly. It does help your fruit to maintain its texture and its color longer than if you choose a no sugar option. So I'm going to use a middle of the road amount for this recipe that I'm going to demonstrate for you. But you do have options. They give you a range of sugar that you can add. They also give you the option of using an unsweetened fruit juice. You can use thawed fruit juice concentrate, or you can just use water. Obviously, if you are using an unsweetened fruit juice, you're still going to be adding some sweetness from the fruit. I chose to use apple juice. Apple is a very nice neutral flavor, so it's not going to change the flavor of my jam here. So I used apple. Another option would be white grape juice. It doesn't add a lot of flavor, but it is going to add some sweetness. If you do not want to use the unsweetened fruit juice, either from concentrate or already reconstituted, you can use water. My recommendation would be to make sure the berries that you are using are very flavorful if you're going to go the water, using the water amount and no sugar. This particular recipe is for raspberry jam, so you could use it to make black raspberry jam like I'm going to do, or it could be raspberry. You could use it for blackberry. If any type of blackberry, raspberry, or blueberry, you can use the amounts that I'm going to show you in the video today. Ball also gives instructions for strawberry, peach, pear, or cherry low or no sugar jam as well, included on the back of the label. Now, when I went to their website, and I will link this in the description box below for you, they do a really nice thing for us, and they do a calculation depending on how many jars you want to make. You can decide how much jam you want to make. You can make this a small batch, which I know many of you are interested in small batch canning. So you can also multiply this recipe. It says their instructions are to not exceed 10 jars per batch. So it gives you the amounts of making 1 jar all the way up to 10 jars. So you don't have to do any math if math is not your thing. And like I said, I will link in the description box where you can find all this information. It's pretty straightforward, the ingredients that we need. We're going to need our raspberries, of course. That Ball recommends crushing them a layer at a time with a potato masher, and that is what I did. You're going to need unsweetened fruit juice, thawed concentrate, or water, that depending on how much sugar you want to add, how much sweetness you want to add. I chose to use unsweetened apple juice. You're going to need our low or no sugar pectin, and then you're also going to need sugar, regular granulated sugar, a sugar substitute, or honey. So it does give you options for sugar substitutes as well, and they give you a range for the amount of added sugar. So you can tweak the recipe however you want depending on how much sugar you want to add. Like I said, I kind of went middle of the road. In this recipe, if you've made much jam, you will notice that most of the time we are required to add lemon juice, not so much for safety, but for gelling purposes. Ball's recipe does not require us to use lemon juice for the raspberry jam. You'll notice that in the video as I'm demonstrating how to do it. They are saying you only need to use bottled lemon juice with blueberries, peaches, or sweet cherries. So since we're using raspberries, I am not going to be adding the lemon juice. Ball's recipe does not call for it. So just make sure that you understand when you need to use the lemon juice and when it can be omitted. In this case, I am omitting it because Ball said not to use it. The other note that I wanted to make is make sure, as with any canning recipe, that you know your altitude. You do have to make adjustments depending on what altitude you are canning at. So I am below 1,000 feet. So anytime I'm demonstrating a canning video for you, it's always for less than 1,000 feet. If you're at higher altitudes, there are adjustments you need to make in both water bath, steam canning, and with pressure canning. So make sure you know that and you make those adjustments. The other thing I wanted to mention is jam. Making jam is fast and furious, so you want to make sure that you have all your ingredients ready. You have your jars and your lids ready to go. And the other thing that I wanted to mention with making the black raspberry jam, it does like to spit and sputter, so make sure you dress accordingly. I ended up with splotches on some of my clothes that I was wearing, and it was kind of on my counter and stuff too. So just be aware of that jams and jellies, when you're making them, can spit and sputter, and when you're working with berries, they have a high concentrate of color to them. So just be aware of that. The amounts that I'm going to be using for today's video will yield the equivalent of 6 8-ounce jelly jars. I did can mine up in both the 8-ounce jelly jars. I also like to do the 4-ounce jelly jars to give away as gifts. So the amounts that I'm going to be explaining to you in the video, like I said, are for the equivalent of 6 8-ounce jars. However you choose to do that. So I'm going to bring you in close and we're going to get started. Guys, we are all set to go. I have my 4 cups of crushed black raspberries in my pot. To that, I'm going to add 1 cup of apple juice. We're going to give that a stir. And we're going to sprinkle in our pectin, 4½ tablespoons. We're going to combine that, and then we are going to turn our heat up to high, and we are going to bring our mixture to a full boil that cannot be stirred down. You do want to stir your fruit very frequently so that it does not burn on the bottom. Ball says to stir constantly. So you want to make sure that you are doing that. We don't want it to burn. So we are going to let this go. It's going to take us a little bit to get there, but we want this to come to a full rolling boil that you cannot stir down. In the meantime, make sure you have your canner and your jars ready. Add about 1/4 teaspoon of butter. That's going to help with foaming. As I understand, it's hard to see through all the steam, but I have brought it up to a full rolling boil that cannot be stirred down. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add our cup of sugar. You can add up to 1.5 cups, and we are going to stir, stir, stir. We're going to bring it back up to a full rolling boil that cannot be stirred down, and we are going to boil it hard for 1 minute, and then we are all set for canning. Hey guys, I boiled my jam hard for 1 minute, just like I told you I was going to, so we are all set for canning. I'm going to be steam canning. You want to steam can or water bath can this. Modern canning guidelines state that we do not need to pre-sterilize jars or lids as long as we are processing for 10 minutes or more, and we are. You do want to start with hot jars. I washed my lids, set them aside. I washed my jars and I kept them hot in my steam canner. So we are ready to fill our jars. I did want to note, as you can tell, this is kind of a messy proposition. So make sure you're using a pot that is deep enough to hold the amount of jam that you are going to be making with a little bit of space left over, because it does make kind of a mess. So 1/4 inch. You do want to use a debubbling tool. chopstick or plastic butter knife to release any air bubbles. So we're just going to poke around our jar a little bit. I am going to use a paper towel dipped in some white vinegar here, and we're going to clean our rims. You do not want anything to interfere with a good seal, so make sure you clean your rims really well. And again, jam is kind of messy, so you do want to make sure you do that. And then we are going to center our lids. And then add our bands to fingertip tight. And then in the canner they go. Okay guys, I got the equivalent of 6 8-ounce jelly jars in my canner. If you are water bath canning this, you want to make sure you have enough water in your canner to cover your jars by at least an inch. 1 to 2 inches is perfect. For the steam canners, there is a dial gauge on top that tells you when you're in your green zone. It tells you when to start your processing time. So make sure you understand how to use your steam canner. Make sure you read the manufacturer's instructions. We are going to bring this up to a full rolling boil if you are water bath canning. If you are steam canning, you just want to be in your green zone. You can start timing then, and we want to process for 10 minutes, adjusting for altitude. So make sure you know your altitude and you know what adjustments you need to make. Also, once you get into your green zone or your water comes to a full rolling boil, you want to adjust your heat just to maintain staying in your green zone or a full rolling boil. You don't want it boiling too vigorously throughout the canning process. So go ahead and process for 10 minutes and then I'll bring you back. So once you finish your processing time, like I said, I processed for 10 minutes. I let my jars sit in my canner for an additional 5 minutes or so, and then I removed the lid and let them cool a little bit more before I took them out of the canner. Once they cool, you're going to want to let them sit undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours, and then you can wash your jars and remove the bands for storage. But I just wanted to show you I did mine yesterday, so everything's nice and cooled and I can handle my jars. But there's your black raspberry jam, you guys. It is so amazing. You do not need to use all that sugar to have a fantastic product on your shelf. For those of you who are trying to cut back on sugar, this is a great way to go, and I hope you'll give the recipe a try. If you have any comments or questions, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you again soon. Have a great day.